Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. Please rise for a moment of silence. I have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson?
Here.
Carmody?
Here.
Fishbein?
Here.
Laffin?
Here.
Marone?
Here.
Tata?
Here.
Testa?
Here.
Zandri?
Here.
Cervoni?
Here. Thank you. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through L.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. There are no items that were removed from the consent agenda. On to item 5, public question and answer period.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. I thought I heard before the meeting started that 8 was withdrawn from the agenda.
That is correct.
So what
You
does
have
that
good
mean?
ears.
Thank you.
It may reappear, it may not. It was withdrawn by the law department.
So they gave no reason?
They didn't give me a reason. It's their prerogative not to go forward.
I understand that, but I
Thank
didn't
you.
know if they did.
No.
So that's, all right. So need to talk to the law department because number 8 is an ARPA grant that was passed under the formula that you guys approved, yet they haven't gotten their money. And I don't know how many others there might be out there that got approved, that by your standard deviation passed, yet but haven't gotten their money. So I'm just wondering why this one's being held up where you had other organizations who, in my opinion, didn't meet criteria, yet got their money already, and this one hasn't gotten a penny yet. So,
We are all waiting for the answer.
well, it's months.
It's not coming tonight.
This passed back, I was on the ARPA panel at that time. So this passed back in March or something, April. And it's now, yes, whenever you did the standard deviation, this would have passed. So I know you just tapped her not to say anything, but this would have been, because a good hearing, I have good sight too. So this was passed I was on the ARPA, we quit in the beginning of April. So it passed before then, you did standard deviation. So whenever standard deviation was done, this one should have passed because it should have been applied to them all. So even if you say it's May, it's 5 months ago, and they still haven't gotten their money where other organizations have. Makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor.
what item was that?
Item 8, the ARPA appropriation for the Coalition for Better Wallingford.
Yes, it's been withdrawn because the purpose of the project is being reviewed. So it probably will return. However, the project that was identified is under review.
And when you say under review, do you mean by the law department or by the coalition?
It's the coalition, YSS, and my office.
So you guys are reviewing it. You're going to change the program,
It most probably will change. That's correct.
but they'll probably still get their money then to do the programs.
Well, we'll come back with a suggested program, and if it's approved by the council, then it would be funded.
Because I don't know of anybody else who was under a fishbowl such as this, because you had some organizations that had lost $1 million, yet you gave them their money. This is just, I'm just surprised. Thank you.
Well, again, we have a duty to see that the money is spent in a manner that best benefits the public, given the programs that we sponsor. And in this case, Coalition is sponsored by the Youth and Social Services Department, and there is a very necessary involvement of a number of departments with regard to these projects.
So what you're telling me, so on all the applications that you passed, not only the ones you passed, but the ones that came in through in standard deviation, you reviewed all those programs? I'm just asking, not because of this, I understand what this one is, but I'm asking, since you said you reviewed this one, did you review all the others?
Are you talking about me personally?
No, somebody.
Well, as a general rule, they were reviewed by the law department to see that whatever was being proposed would be appropriate, and if it's an entity other than government, then we have a duty to keep track of what is spent, and
It'll be
if they
interesting.
obey what they comply with what they've indicated is their project.
It'll be interesting to see if you really did that when the money's spent and when the paperwork goes back to the attorney and you review everything to see whether it was spent the way it should be. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Stancuna, 18 Old Village Circle, Wallingford. Item 9 with the railroad station, I think we should just keep it the way it is and possibly just keep the adult education department there. And because we've been discussing about where to put it, and there's discussion of it to be put in the armory where the police are leaving allegedly, and because of the asbestos or whatever in the basement. That's a bad idea. If there's no problem there, we should keep the police in that building actually, and withdraw that whole thing of moving to the other side of town. And under 10, with the community pool, this is basically going up the wrong alley again. There's no reason to reopen that pool. It's going to cost millions of dollars. And if anything, we have to make it into a skateboard park, like I've mentioned before, possibly put up a building for a medical clinic for the homeless too, to check out people that can't afford. I wrote a letter when the laws passed in 2020, and I wrote one immediately, went down to the Wallingford Police Station. No one ever got back to me. I got the stamp from the desk, sergeant, lieutenant, whatever, and it's here. No one ever got back to me. This is a Connecticut state law that was passed. I applied for the Civilian Review Board to start it. We don't have one in Wallingford. This was totally ignored. Everyone laughed at me. No one returned a message, not a phone call, nothing in the mail. This was totally put under the rug, and I have it right here, stamped from the Wallingford Police Department. I again advocate very strongly that we get a civilian review board, and I want to be on that board. If you're doing your job as a police officer, there should be no problems. We just had a man that was killed Friday night in another town, and the one here was Monday night. That shouldn't have happened. I want to ride shotgun on all 3 shifts. I've done this kind of field. I went to school for sociology. You know, we got to do a lot better. Let people get involved. Stop just letting the police do what they want. This is why they're doing what they want. And so basically, over by South, hello? The guy turned the mic down. Over at South Elm and Ward Street, we desperately need a light there. It's got the 4 stop signs, Mr. Savoni, Chair. And if you
know what you're
stand
talking
there,
about.
I go there like around 5 o'clock a few times a week. And I tell you, there must be a lot of accidents over there. If you stand with me, you'll witness a lot of people almost either smash into somebody or texting. We need a light there, you know, desperately. Someone is basically crying out for help. I got people trying to cross the street. People just blow through the stop sign. So if we want to get things done in this town, we got to start with our safety, get a safety committee. And I'd like to be on that too. But the guy turned the mic down again. Yes, it went down. I know, I've been doing this for years. But basically, we really need to forget this community pool. It's not in the best interest of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no takers, on to item 6.
Mr. Chairman, I move we make a budget appropriation for fiscal year 2023, 2024 in the amount of $280,000 for the electric division.
Is there a second? Good evening. Please remind us who you are for the record.
Rick Hendershot, Director of Public Utilities.
Jake Arborio, General Manager of Electric Division.
Mary Ann Dill, Business Office Manager of the Electric Division.
Thank you. So, what's going on?
Well, we're here this evening seeking Town Council approval to move $280,000 of the Electric Division's on-hand cash out of retained earnings and into the current budget in the account that's where capital plant line transformers are purchased.
Okay. Why?
Transformers are much more expensive than we thought they would be when the budget was prepared 8 or 9 months ago, and so we need to move the cash into the budget so we can encumber the funds so the purchasing bureau will issue a purchase order.
Good enough. Questions from the council? Oh, none. Questions from the public? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. You're all set. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is a presentation on Red Ribbon Week from Youth and Social Services and from the Coalition for a Better Wallingford.
Okay, just making sure everybody can hear me.
Good.
Thank you for having us.
And
I'm
once again, who you are for the record,
Mandy Miranda, Director at Youth and Social Services.
and who's with you.
Diane Mark, Executive Director, Coalition for Better Wallingford.
Thank you. I think this is your first appearance in front of us. Welcome.
So, here tonight to talk about Red Ribbon Week. It started on Monday. It's going to go through Halloween. We have, many of you have seen, I've sent this out, the calendar for the week. We have a lot of agencies that have joined us in celebrating, honoring, uniting during Red Ribbon Week regarding substance abuse. The more we talk about it, the more we remove the stigma around it and show support to the families that need it. So this week, primarily, I wanted to talk about the event on Thursday night here in Chambers. We have speakers from the community agencies coming to speak. We have students from both high schools, middle school students coming. I'm personally excited for two people, one being Diane coming to speak, but I also, at Youth and Social Services, we hired a substance abuse, drug alcohol counselor. She started about 3 to 4 weeks ago. She's part-time, actively started working within probably the first week, has clients working on program ideas. Her name is Maria Quiles, so she's bilingual. She's going to be working with the Scout community as well. So we're super excited and blessed that we found her, full of knowledge. So she will be speaking as well that night. So if the community wants to come out and see her, meet her, that would be fantastic. Also, as you see on the calendar, I have extras I'll leave here in Chambers. We've been going to the middle schools as Youth and Social Services, as well as the high schools this week, doing vaping education, meeting with students, talking about mental health. Have gotten a fantastic response from the students, from the administration within the schools, as well as the health department has done their program. They jumped on board, so that's been super successful in talking about Red Ribbon Week specifically. And then SCOW has actually, I don't know if most of you have seen the red ribbons tied around the trees in the center of town. The Adelante group has helped with that. Again, recognition for people to talk about what does the red ribbon mean. There's information in a lot of businesses in the center of town as to what that means. So people can find information anywhere. The calendar is on our town website, as well as information about Thursday night's events. And I'm going to pass it over to Diane.
Good evening, everyone. I wrote a speech, and I'm going to read it so that I don't get
As long as you stay on the microphone, that is fine. So
Okay.
apparently, it's not picking you up. So if you could just get that a little closer to you.
Hello?
Yes, you're here.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, Town Council members. My name is Diane Marks. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition. I would like to begin by reading our mission statement. It is our mission to engage Wallingford's community resources to produce healthy, caring, and responsible citizens by raising awareness and reducing substance abuse among our youth. Our mission has not and will not change. When we talk about drug and substance abuse, our youth are the most vulnerable in the community. Education, prevention, support, and access to resources specifically for our youth and their families are our highest priority. However, we acknowledge that the conversation around specifically alcohol and marijuana is nuanced. Legislation across the United States is changing. In Connecticut, if you are above the age of 21, you're permitted to engage in responsible drinking and recreational or medicinal marijuana use. The coalition will not change our mission, but we are and can change our approach. We will continue to service our youth and their families, but we can also begin engaging in conversations with our adult community about responsible use. We realize that our youth don't stay youth forever. It is our job to give them the tools they need to be healthy, compassionate, and responsible. This is not negotiable because there are children's lives at stake. We can and will continue to hold our youth at our highest priority. However, we also understand that once they are 21, they can legally choose to partake in drinking or recreational marijuana use. Just as it is our responsibility to build up our youth, we are also making it our responsibility to engage with our adult communities and begin having conversations about safe and responsible use. This transition in our messaging and programming will inevitably be a long one. The coalition is committed to using factual information to guide any new programs we introduce for our town. As stated before, we are focused on youth and their families. Substance abuse prevention and awareness is our main focus. We will continue to educate our youth to promote prevention and awareness. We currently have programs geared to our elementary school, middle schoolers, and high schoolers that serve to promote healthy living. We will continue to develop new programs to meet the needs of our community. As we continue working towards our mission, we will also begin engaging in new conversations about responsible drinking and marijuana use as an adult. We realize that there is a need in our community, our adult community, that needs to be addressed. To clarify, we do not agree with the abuse of substances, alcohol, marijuana, or otherwise, but we can acknowledge that there is space for conversation about responsible and safe drinking, as well as responsible and safe medical and recreational marijuana use. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you and your organizations for your hard work. I think it's very important and at times thankless and under-acknowledged, but this week we'll get on top of that. Questions, comments from the council? There being none, thank you very much. Have a great night. All right, on to item 9. Councilor Fishbein, your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a few weeks ago, we had a presentation of sorts involving the train station. To my knowledge, there had not been previous conversations about, other than hiring Dave Stein's outfit to be involved with the grant process and rehabbing all of that stuff, and the report back that we were unsuccessful in getting that grant. Talked that night about a lot of things that could happen to the train station, and certainly I think the flavor was that the train station should be utilized, something. As a result of that meeting, I had a lot of people contacting me, what are you going to do? There's only so much that we can do. I hearken back, it's sort of like the high school situation where they came to us without any ask. Similarly, that night, there really was no ask. There was a representation of wanting to feel the pulse. So, we've seen a lot about that building, very concerned about that building, the condition it's in, and trying to restore it to being the beacon, or part of the beacon of our town. So, what can we do? So as a result of that, I did put together a proposed resolution for the council to talk about, perhaps adopt. Certainly, I recognize that we need the administration to be together with us. In fact, I think under our charter, the administration is supposed to initiate requests, suggestions to the council. I will note that the general statutes do require EDC to give us an annual report. I think it's 7-136. Making recommendations. I don't recall ever receiving that report since I've been up here, but I think we should just try and move the ball forward. And the resolution that I've presented says, be it resolved, whereas Wallingford's historic railroad station is located at 51 Quinnipiac Street, aka 37 Hall Avenue, and has been owned by the town of Wallingford since August 1, 1964, and whereas whereas Wallingford's historic railroad station was originally constructed in 1871 by the Hartford and New Haven Railroad based upon architectural renderings by W.P. Dickerman, and whereas since October 20th, 1993, Wallingford's historic railroad station has been listed on the U.S. National Park Service's National Register of Historic Places, and whereas in 1994, Wallingford's historic railroad station was closed to the general public and its use limited to private use, such as Wallingford's adult education program, as well as being the home for the New Haven Model Railroad Club, and whereas Wallingford's historic railroad station has internally and externally deteriorated into a sad state of disrepair, and whereas the mayor, the town council, and the town's economic development commission have all expressed positive interest in restoring Wallingford's historic railroad station to once again become a more useful and vibrant part of Wallingford's historic or downtown center, and whereas all such expressions have involved the prospect of third parties being involved in said revitalization of this town-owned property, and whereas it has been represented to the town council that an appropriation of approximately $1.5 million will be necessary to bring Wallingford's historic railroad station to a state of white space expected for prospective development by third parties, and whereas the town council desires to make positive steps towards this revitalization, and now therefore be it resolved that the Wallingford Town Council requests that the mayor recommend to said town council an appropriation of $1.5 million for said purposes, and that a request for proposals be issued to solicit proposals for the revitalization and conversion of Wallingford's historic railroad station to once again become a useful and vibrant portion of Wallingford's downtown area to be used by the general public. So that is the proposed resolution, and I do move the resolution at this time.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion on the motion? Counselor Testa.
Thank you. I appreciate the thought and work that went into this. In effect, this is, it seems to me, a new way of making a motion to do something. I don't disagree in principle to most of what was said. A resolution seems to carry with it, clearly a number of statements. And then the resolution ends with what in effect is a motion to do something. And I am interested in considering and potentially approving a motion to do something. But I'm a little uneasy with the whole idea of approaching action of the council via the adoption of a resolution. It almost starts to set a precedent that I'm a little uneasy with. That's my thought right now. Because within the resolution there are presentations of fact that we would all be agreeing with, and then there's what in effect is a motion to do something, and I'd be a lot more comfortable if we were presented with a motion to take an action. And so that's where I am at the moment. Thank you.
Counselor Laffin.
I agree with a lot of what Counselor Testa said, but so the EDC is before us. What is your guys' position here?
Good evening.
What is the progress? Thank you.
Good evening. Joe Mira, Chair of the Economic Development Committee. With me is staff Don Kraus, and co-chair is Mark Gingrich. Our position right now is we respectfully ask the council to table this motion for 2 weeks until your next meeting. We would like an opportunity to come back before you at your next meeting and fill in the presentation, the former presentation was just an informational presentation, and unfortunately, we didn't prepare you with the opportunity of all the facts that presentation offers to the town. And I think it's important to each council person to understand the opportunities in our presentation. And that's why we're asking it to be tabled, because we have to understand something. This project is not just a railroad project, the railroad station project. This project, the railroad station project, is going to affect that entire area. And there is a lot going on down there. Not by mistake. It's a lot going on because your town's POCD requested it. Your planning and zoning commission has been working on enhancing zoning in the area. Your economic development commission has had several discussions with many departments. We were involved with planning and zoning on workshops, many workshops over the last 12 to 15 years. Your planning and zoning town planner has been the last 2 or 3, I forget the numbers now, have been very instrumental in helping us walk through this project over the last 12 to 15 years. Again, the workshops, our previous economic development specialist even held a kind of a town hall meeting with the property owners down there to get input from the people that are really affected by this project. So we have a lot of background information that we would like, that's packaged into the presentation that we would like to share with you at your next meeting. And asking you to, again, respectfully table this for one meeting, I think would be a benefit to you, to the town, and to the area. This is a real game changer for the town, and I appreciate all the effort that's been put into this RFP because, again, as Councilman Testa says, there's a lot in there that I agree with, but I think right now, before the council makes a move, we've waited 25 years, I guess. We're here now. 2 more weeks is not going to change things. There's also some updates on the adult ed program that's in process. So, again, we ask that it be tabled.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm good with waiting for the formal presentation, and I assume then a motion or a request for action. I don't know if we're getting a little carried away and going along with what Councilor Testa was saying with some of the resolutions. Like, so we're asking the mayor to ask us with maybe numbers for something to happen when we're 2 weeks away from what sound like you're getting ready to schedule a presentation anyway, which would result in an action from a request from the
Presentation
mayor.
with numbers, by the way.
Right. So I'm beyond sensitive to that, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that in the EDC world, that this could be a display of the cards in our hand when you're working with developers and negotiating things and dollar amounts for construction, stipulations of, some developer coming, well, I know that the council wants them to build this, and this, instead of you having an opportunity to make it part of the negotiation, get something in return or some sort of balancing act. So I'm not in favor of the resolution tonight. I don't think we need to table it because it sounds like if they're going to present, we're going to have the ability to make an action next week, or we could just bring it up again if we really needed to ask the mayor to ask us to do something. So I support you guys. Thank you for the progress.
Thank you.
I know it's been years. Then Councilor Shortell and I met with people, Board of Ed and Planning Office, and all the time it's been several years of ever since the POCD
Yes.
became formalized. There has been ongoing meetings about this topic, and I know just because they weren't all recorded and put on YouTube doesn't mean that a lot of work wasn't going into it. So I appreciate all the work that you guys have done. Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
So just to respond to some of the things, first of all, didn't we twice pass resolutions about the pool? It's exactly what we did, right? So this is nothing new. We can only do certain things, and
Apparently, you're not getting picked up by the sound system.
I think there's a problem with the sound system. We can only do certain things. And up until that meeting that we had, nobody had come to us and said, we've excluded the general public from being part of this. We've selected our person, and we, without authority, because we certainly didn't empower that action, have been negotiating and talking to our selected person. I mean, you've got some serious legal issues there, but we don't need to go there at this point. What's to stop? I don't understand. If we pass a resolution that is a voice of the council saying we would like this to go out to RFP, how does that preclude you guys from coming to us with some presentation with your selected individual with numbers? I don't understand how the two don't work.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor?
I think the resolution says you're committed to an RFP process, which would mean an individual who is very interested in doing a project has put in a lot of work. There's been a lot of discussion. How would you take that if you had been doing that and the legislative body says, well, we're going to put out an RFP? I don't know that that would be an encouragement for anyone to be continuing to discuss anything. They're not going to disclose something when to do so will jeopardize their involvement in the RFP. So they may or may not participate in an RFP, but they're not going to say anything more now when there's real substance to be shared. I think you need to know exactly what this project looks like. If you really don't feel that it's in our interest, then fine. But the reaction to the previous meeting was everyone liked the idea of a food court. Well, that's the main issue here. What use will be put in there? If everyone feels that a food court would be a great addition to the downtown, a use in the railroad station, then the details of that are important, but the first hurdle is what will the use be? And having everyone or nearly everyone enthused about the idea of a food court deserves a full look at it. And if you still feel, well, let's see what other ideas are out there, because an RFP would mean anyone can be coming up with any idea and proposing it, then fine. But I do think, given the work that has been done, to hear what the details are, so much as we can determine them at this point, and there are more details, from what I understand, just give that courtesy. Listen to that, and if you still want to go with an RFP, fine.
So nothing stops whomever, there's an RFP, from giving the presentation equally with any other potential RFP person. But selecting a particular individual and having them be the sole presenter is not fair. I don't know how anybody could think that's fair. As far as that individual not wanting to do more work, that's part of the problem, is that this person has never done one of these projects before. If you are in the industry, if you've done one of these projects and you're negotiating with a town agency, the question from that individual who's done this before is naturally, do you have the power to negotiate? So the fact that somebody has engaged in this activity to potentially their detriment and then hear, well, they're not going to do further because we're going to open up to the general public, it's not our fault at all. I would like to see a fair process. you want to put that guy up here and have us pepper him with questions, so be it. But I'm going to tell you, it is not a fair process to the general public. I heard a lot of problems that night, a lot of concerns about crossing the tracks. I think almost everybody up here was concerned about somebody parking on the Brothers parking lot and crossing the tracks. A food store or something like that, or, you know, that has booths and food and all of that stuff, is going to be a high concentration area. That question, unless it's going to be part of the presentation, I don't know that anybody's approached Amtrak. We certainly haven't empowered anybody to approach Amtrak to ask about that. We talked about a tunnel and going underneath and all that stuff, and we don't know what people are going to come to us with as far as usages. You know, might be a great place for an art gallery or something like that, which would have less usage. We may, as a body, feel that that's a good thing. You know, a mixed use may be a good thing. I mean, if we're going to retain this property and then we are going to engage in allowing somebody to use it, we're going to become landlords. We don't have a very good track record of being landlords in this town. So, you know, that's part of the package that we sort of heard about last time. And I don't know what else is potentially out there. I'm not a developer. Neither is the individual who came before us as far as these kinds of projects. And I'm just very, very concerned about whatever representations have been made, what discussions have been had, and then all that stuff happens, and then it comes to the council, and then it's the typical thing. You got 24 hours to vote on this, you're locked in, it's a box. You know, this resolution doesn't impact anything. We passed a resolution twice having to do with the pool. Has anything happened with regard to the pool? Nope. Has anybody been negatively impacted? Nope. So now to say you pass a resolution, the sky is falling, I don't believe it. So just looking to advance the ball and being fair to everyone. And nobody should find fault with that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Marone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have no problem waiting the 2 weeks. I have no problem moving forward with the resolution. I mean, again, the resolution really doesn't bind anyone to anything. I think some of the, certainly not speaking for Craig, but I think some of the frustration from my part anyway is just that building has come into such a state of disrepair. And I appreciate the EDC coming forward with ideas to try to sort of remedy that. I don't think realistically anyone's going to come in and offer to build, you know, rebuild the portion of the building that's going to be ours. So, you know, I mean, I'm just frustrated that it's in the state that it's in, and so I don't want an art gallery, but there's any sort of economic, you know, purpose that we could get in that building, I think would be fantastic. So I appreciate the work you put into it. I'm fine with the motion, with the resolution. Again, a resolution doesn't really bind anyone to anything, despite the representations. But if it's 2 weeks and we're going to have answers, then I'm okay with that too. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Testa.
Thank you. I want to be clear. I am pretty much in agreement with Councilor Fishbein on his concerns about this. I think we feel the same way. I just brought up, and yes, we have passed resolutions. We called it a resolution. It was the only way we could ask the administration to do something, and we did it via a motion. I was just questioning the whole idea of a multi-whereas resolution and all those whereas statements. Once we pass it, we all agree with all of those statements. And I was just saying, can we just simplify it and end it with, make the motion that was the last part of the resolution? But I'm not going to, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. I agree with you. And I'm a little taken aback by the mayor's comments. I respectfully objected at the last meeting to how we got here. And in doing so, I said, I'm pleased to know that the ideas that are being presented are ones that I like. But then to say, hey, everybody thought this was a great idea. Why are we going to stop now? We've got to step back. How did you get here? I didn't approve the hiring of anybody that I recall. If I did, then please correct me. I don't recall us approving the hiring of somebody to put a plan together for this. I don't recall that. So to then imply that so much work has already been done, why would we go out to an RFP is a little bit alarming. Because normally everybody gets very uptight if you consider hiring somebody without going out to bid, or without doing an RFP. And to then say, let's just carry this through because the idea sounds good, that's a very difficult precedent to set. And in effect, it will require a bid waiver. We will have to do a bid waiver to hire the person who is presenting and wants to run this. The only way we could do it is with a bid waiver. And anytime the bid waiver comes up, flags fly, everybody starts talking about the need to go out to bid, to have an RFP, et cetera, et cetera. So I still have concerns about how we got here, where just because the potential idea is a good one, that almost carries with it a steamroller effect. How do you get in the way of that? Well, this is something we all have mentioned, well, most of us. We've had discussions in the past, and there's been an underlying understanding that we would like to put an RFP out and find out what ideas are out there. Well, the commission did that on their own and then came to us and said, hey, we got a great idea. We should go with this. So then that requires us to bypass an RFP process, because what you're suggesting to us is you came up with the best idea, and we need to accept that. When in fact, the idea you came up with may in fact be the best one. But, I'm very uncomfortable with how we got here and what I'm being asked to do without following the normal procedure of doing an RFP and or a bid. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the chair of the EDC, in summary, the Community Challenge Grant we did not receive, but we became aware of some serious difficulties in ever getting that grant because of the size of the building, and I'm going to let you speak to it, Joe. And in the course of that, they talked with several developers and, became aware of other facts and figures, and now a party has come forward and has great interest in it. I mean, most of the Community Challenge grants, they're large projects.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few clarifications. Again, we're respectfully asking to table this, not because of our idea, only to give you time to understand our idea, and if it so pleases you, next meeting, and you want to go for a bid waiver, maybe that's the road to take. But we thought it would be to your benefit to really understand the project. And the reason why we're asking you to table it is that doing an RFP at this time is going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on time factors and what have you. We all know that with that, costs go up, building costs go up, investors have other opportunities. That's the only reason. We're not saying take our opportunity or leave it. This is not where we're at. We're saying we've came this far, give us an opportunity, give you the layout and go from there. To address the mayor's statement, what happened was, yes, first of all, what gave us, I don't know if it's power, what started us on this road was the POCD, the town's POCD. It requested that something be done with the lower part of the town, et cetera, et cetera. I got the law here if you want to read it. But that was the beginning. The grant was, again, the motivation. And as the mayor said, we got turned down. Basically, the project didn't work. So we started looking to do, and I've mentioned this at the last meeting, we started looking to put together an RFP, and I was looking for some facts and figures on what we needed to put into it to make it realistic so we can get some intelligent feedback. In doing so, we went out to the public. I polled a few developers, a few real experienced realtors, commercial realtors. We had one commercial realtor, when I spoke to him, came up from the lower part of the state. He did a tour of the railroad station. He left for a couple of weeks. He had a family emergency down south. He came back, and we went over the facts and figures, and the project just wasn't big enough for a venture, a single venture, in his experience. And he wasn't a young chick, so I had figured he had the experience that I didn't have. And that coming from me should say a lot. We moved on, and then in the conversation with one of the new tenants in that area, who's looking to put multi-million-dollar investment in that area, said he would like to see he would consider partnering with the town or somehow putting an arts council, an arts center in there. So I went down to Milford. They have one, the railroad station. Talking to them, getting facts and figures. Cost effectiveness, I mean, it just wasn't there. It was actually, the intent of the town was to do something that would drive the economy, foot traffic, et cetera, and profitable. An arts center just wasn't that. And as the conversation went on, another investor came looking at property in the same area, again, looking to put a couple of $1 million into the town. These two investors started talking, they started talking to us, and we started exploring different ideas, and this is what brought us where we are today. So it wasn't that we were looking for an individual who had a bright idea. It's just, this is the way it evolved, and one word led to another, and as it materialized, and this is why I want to give you the opportunity to see what I saw. If you agree with it, great. Again, if you don't, you always have the opportunity to go forward with the RFP. And that's the only concern with the RFP at this time. It isn't the RFP per se, the RFP. It's the idea that if we put an RFP in now, it's going to delay everything, and, it's just cost effective. It's just, again, this is a project that your commissions, a number of people in town have been working on this for well over 15 years. I mean, we've had, I don't know how many meetings, rezoning this and rezoning that. We're here, and it's coming to fruition, and all we're asking for is the courtesy of another 2 weeks, and then, we can have the same discussion we're having tonight, just with some more meat on the bones. Thank you for your time.
Councilor Allenson?
Thank you for coming tonight. I am not opposed to tabling this, especially since it seems that we're very close to having another real conversation about it. But, even just getting some details, I can already see that that's going to be a long meeting. So it's kind of the perfect example of having an argument before we have any details at all. I would compare or contrast this to the pool in that the difference about a resolution on the train station and a resolution on the pool is that we had talked about the pool for years. And there was much discussion back and forth, and there was a lot of delay. And as a council, we couldn't see any other way forward. We were not being proposed with another solution, and we wanted our individual positions known. So I would just say that this is different from the pool, which of course I don't regret my decision related to the pool. I still think we want a pool. And here we may want to revisit this with fewer whereases in the future, but and take on the request for proposals. I just do think that we could stand to wait a couple of weeks until the presentation is fully put together and we're not speaking in terms of nuance, right? Where we don't have a full information, like, let's get it in front of us. So that's my position on that. I would be hesitant tonight to vote for any kind of an RFP, knowing that that we are going to find out more information in a couple of weeks. And once again, I am happy to readdress this in a future meeting. I do caution that talking about time constraints and timing and the length of time that one process takes versus another has gotten us in trouble in the very recent past with data centers. So I would say, you know, we would want to, as a council, it's a very cautionary tale to lean on that as a reason to not move forward. And again, I fully expect that even though you're giving me a lot of your discovery process because of the arguments raised tonight, that there will be, you know, a lot of detail around the discovery process and how you guys came to this and how the conversation started with this developer. So I really look forward to your presentation in a couple of weeks. And for that purpose, I won't support this tonight, at least, because I want more details. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Councilor Carmody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I too have concerns about the process, and I would be inclined to support an open and fair RFP process, but I don't see the harm in waiting the 2 weeks and to respect the EDC's request to just wait until their presentation takes place. We can have this discussion again, but I think we should be able to hear you out, and I would echo Councilor Allenson and just say I think we should wait these 2 weeks. Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein?
I don't want to reiterate myself, but I think you're creating a problem by allowing one selected developer to make a presentation to us without affording the public or others the opportunity. You are showing favoritism, and that is not fair. There's nothing that stops that individual and or individuals from making their presentation as part of a fair and open process, as we did with the American Legion building. We accepted all of those proposals. Mr. Mira, you said that you spoke to developers. Did you email developers?
No.
So you just cold called developers?
As I said, I was just fact-finding at the time, trying to find out what information they would be looking for in an RFP. I haven't done it before, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just trying to, I mean, you've made representations about lack of interest. And certainly when we do RFPs, or, I mean, I can only harken back to the American Legion. You know, we sort of said, this is the building and it's a mess and it's falling down, and we had intended on actually demolishing the building. I toured it, you know, there was a lot of problems in there, but what can you do with it? You know, it's sort of a similar situation, and there were quite a few, we had a lot of meetings about that. And similarly, the community pool. You know, we appointed a commission to deal specifically with the pool. And we had many, many meetings where they came to us and they said, well, you could have 4 lanes, or you could have 6 lanes, and you could have a splash park, or you could have the, you know, the outdoor senior citizen stuff. And, you know, what do you think? It was all part of an open process. And that was property that we owned, that we were going to maintain at some point. Here, you know, we're being asked to engage in a marriage. And we're only presented with one potential spouse. It's sort of like, we don't do arranged marriages in this country. Sort of looks what it's looking like to me. So certainly, you know, I read the minutes of EDC. I saw, I think it was July or August, I started to see sprinklings about this. I know that you folks have been talking about it for a while, but when you say the RFP process is going to be 4 to 5 months, you guys have been talking about this for 4 to 5 months. So nothing stopped EDC from coming to us when you were having those discussions, when Mr. Miro, when you were calling developers and talking to us about it and doing the RFP then, and then we'd be here, right, at the end of 2023, potentially looking at all those great projects. So, you know, to now hear, well, it's going to be 4 to 5 months, once again, not our fault. It's our property, and we should be making the best use out of this property, getting into the marriage with the individual and or individuals that we feel will be appropriate to go into the very long-term future. Because once a decision is made with regard to this project and you enter into that marriage, it's going to be very difficult to unpack that situation. This is a big decision in our downtown. It's not out one of the, you know, Barnes Park or something like that. It is in the center of our downtown. This is very important, and I'm going to tell you, I think I'd rather wait for the full presentation from all of the potential suitors than, you know, and once again, you know, resolution is a resolution. We've seen resolutions that are just ignored. But I think that, you know, generally the majority of this body feels that there should be an open and fair process to everyone, and that's basically what the resolution calls for. What I had anticipated is actually the bristling at the 1.5 million. I threw it in there because that's what Mr. Stein, you know, our trusted professional, told us we would need to bring this property to a white space so it was desirable for many, many developers. So,
Could I ask?
sure.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, just number one, two things. American Legion building, we were trying to sell. Town was not looking to hold on to it. We are going to continue to own the railroad station. And as to the foreseeable future, a marriage that doesn't end, it will all be based upon a lease, and it will have a term. I mean, yes, a use is being performed, but it's not like we're no longer going to own that building. There will be someone in charge, but the terms of the lease will dictate what the details are. So those two aspects of what you're talking about, Craig, you know, it's inaccurate to compare it to the American Legion building, and it's not a permanent relationship. It's a matter of what term of lease is arrived at, and whether we're satisfied when the first part of the term comes up, it can be canceled. So just as a clarification.
But first of all, Mayor, this body has not determined that we are going to retain that property. If somebody comes to us and says, you know, I'll give you $10 million, I mean, because they're going to be constrained by it being on the historic registry. They can only do certain things to this building. So this body has not said affirmatively that we are going to retain it. I'm not suggesting that we sell it, but to say that that decision has already been made, I don't recall us making that decision. If somebody came to us with some sort of proposal that this body felt was desirable, then this body will make that decision. So I know there's been some discussions about possibly going out to the general public and making that part of the package. That has not been discussed up here.
I know of nothing with regard to that. And if the council is interested in selling the railroad station, we need to hear that now. Because even if an RFP went out, you'd have to state that in the RFP. Any options, including sale of the property to someone, we would have to make that clear. This is the first time hearing anyone would be willing to sell that building. Certainly, I don't recommend in any way we sell that building. But an RFP that would entertain that would have to be stated in the RFP.
I'm just saying that we are dealing with a blank canvas. If you're taking the position that we would have to put that in an RFP, I'm not aware of any requirement. When we say we've got a property, this is the condition it's in, we are looking for proposals for utilization of the property, I don't know how that bars someone from making a proposal. I'm not saying I would accept it, but a proposal to purchase.
Out of fairness in the RFP, we should dictate whether we're looking to have a lease or whether we're looking to sell the building to someone. I don't know how you could leave that out of it. How do you compare someone who says, well, I want to purchase the building, it'll be mine, and someone who says, well, we'll enter into a lease? I don't know how you compare the two. Everyone's got to have the same playing field. So if you're going to say, well, we could sell it or it could be a lease, then that's got to be stated in the RFP.
I'm not aware of any requirement that your RFP be that specific. When we say we've got a property, this is the condition it's in, this is the inspection time, come to us, oh world, come to us with your suggestions. I'm not aware of any requirement. Certainly I'm open to being educated.
I disagree with you completely.
All right, well, that's not the first time. So I defer.
Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, now that they came up, I guess the mayor asked if any of us were opposed to selling if we would let you know. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to selling. I don't really have much to say about what we're talking about tonight. I understand the concerns, obviously, about the RFP and having somebody come before that's out, but I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I'm certainly, I don't support the part about the $1.5 million at this point. But I just wanted it on the record since it came up that if we decide to have a lease or we decide to sell, I mean, depending on the project, I'm open to either. So just wanted that stated. Thank you.
All right. See no hands on the council. Questions or comments from the public?
Jason Michael, 81 Meadow Street. I find myself in a pretty unique position as I own a couple properties downtown, one being my home. I also own a little store on Quinnipiac Street. And so far I'm listening to all kinds of stuff and ideas and should we push things off and not. And I think what's being lost here is the building itself. If you want to talk about jumping the gun on things, I mean, the building should be made whole. It essentially, if you look at, and I don't know if it's the same gentleman who was here, Mr. Sullivan, the last time they made a proposal, if it's the same guy and his partners that weren't made public, that's going to be up again for the tabling of this in the next proposal, which I disagree that they should be allowed. I agree with Councilor Fishbein that it should be an even playing field if things are going to be posted as if the building's fixed, the 1.5 million, now we've got this white space and it puts the town in the driver's seat. Right now, we've got a building in shambles and we're kind of hoping that this works out where this developer is going to fix some of it and we don't have to fix the rest of it, and it kind of corners you. Whereas if the building is a blank canvas, up to snuff, up to code, and available for multiple developers to pitch their ideas, even if it's the same idea, even if it is a food court, Quincy Market, partial art space, every developer is going to bring a different idea. And that's what brings me to the point I'm trying to make, that there's 9 councilors up here, there's 3 representatives from EDC, and there's a mayor. And everyone's making these discussions and planning future discussions, but when does the public become involved? As it is the public's building. And I just ask, and the last time I came up here, and it was the same group and talking about the same stuff, that I just ask that if we are going to wait, I'm certainly in favor of fixing the building to a white space. I think it just makes it more palatable for more people with more ideas. But certainly, I don't think anything should be proposed at that size and magnitude without the public's input on what we should ultimately do with the building. Whether it be sell it, which I'm not personally in favor for, or keep it, but certainly the building has to be made whole. And I think that's really the starting point of this. we're talking about a building in dire need of repair, top to bottom. And we're talking about the possibilities of doing things like putting $1.5 million into it from the town, or multiple millions of dollars in from a developer, of which we'll take lease money from, but the building's a mess. So if we're going to concentrate our efforts in debating what to do with the train station, it should be, do we fix it or not? And I think once we figure that out, everything else might unfold in front of us in a more orderly fashion. And lastly, I just have a question. I know that the fire marshal was in there doing his inspection weeks ago, and I know that the inspection results have been sent to the state fire marshal. Has the town received the results of our fire marshal's inspection?
Not to my knowledge.
So it hasn't been presented to the town yet, it's at the state level only?
I have not been notified by the fire chief that we've received anything.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mayor, you look like you want to speak.
Say, if we're really going to sell it, then I don't know how much money I'd want to put into it. If you're going to sell the building, then we sell the building, and why would we put money to the tune of $1 million or more dollars into a building we won't own? So I don't quite understand that. Whether you'd recover that money in the sale of the building is an open question. So, there is two roads diverge here. One is sale, and one is ongoing ownership and a use, either municipal or otherwise.
Thank you. Councilor Laffin.
I don't want to sell it. I think I've said that before, but I'll say it again. This is the only property I'm in favor of the town being a landlord in a commercial transaction. I feel like I've said that a couple times. We're not a landlord to anybody else. I think we kind of host some nonprofits and other community organizations. So this would be a unique situation, and standard participation in this situation would be furnishing the building in a nice condition, vanilla shell, white space, whatever you're calling it now. And that includes repairing exterior, whatever. That is standard. That is standard operating procedure. We might as well come up with a resolution to ask the mayor, to ask the council to be in favor of feeding the cats and the dogs at the animal control. That is standard operation. That is what we do. I move we table this for 2 weeks.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Marone.
So, I mean, we could table it or not, but we're going to table a resolution which has no impact anyway. So we're going to talk about something later that has no impact because we didn't talk about it enough tonight. I guess I'm just trying to understand the rationale. Like if I guess just vote no, and then if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. Or if it passes, then it's like what difference, it's not binding to any party. It's just a statement of what the council's wishes are. So it's kind of like to table it, we can't decide what our wishes are.
Councilor Laffin.
For me, tabling ends the discussion for tonight, moves it to next week. That requires less votes than calling the question. And I made it clear that I was against this, but others seemed like they wanted to keep it on the table. And out of respect for those counselors, I wanted to keep their options alive for the next meeting without being disrespectful to the original intent of the resolution.
All right. On the motion to table,
Mr.
please.
Chairman,
Oh.
sorry. I just want to question the 2 weeks. Does it matter? I mean, I
To
think
the
you're
next
attempting
meeting?
the next meeting. Thank you.
All right, so the motion is to table to the next meeting.
Can we have a special meeting on election night? Is that 2 weeks?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be here
Yeah,
that night.
I feel like we're not
A
doing
little
that.
busy.
So the roll call on the motion to table, please.
Allenson?
Yes.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
No.
Laffin? Marone?
No.
Tata?
Testa?
May I ask for a clarification on something? It appears that the desire to table this is to allow the EDC to make a presentation to us. So will that happen before we take up the
It seems to make,
consideration of this motion?
seems to make sense.
Could also move to table their presentation.
Oh, my.
Well, that's not before us now, is it?
Okay, so thank you for the clarification, and I vote yes.
Landry?
No.
Cervoni?
Yes, the motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, item 10 on the pool. Councilor Testa, your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, we've been talking about this a lot. My wishes and my intent are fairly simple. A couple of years ago, there was a project bid for the community pool. And we approved moving forward with it, and that approval was vetoed. So from that point forward, I have regularly requested that we reconsider that project as it had been bid and as it had been approved. And that's what I've been asking for and talking about for a long time. Speaking of the resolution that we had passed, or a couple of resolutions. So we chose to pass resolutions because it was really the only way we could impress upon the mayor that we wanted to see this project rebid. And we did that a couple of times. I do know that at some point within the last year or so, maybe a little before that, it was requested that when we rebid this project, we also ask to find out what it would cost to reopen it in its existing format, if you will, or structure. And I know for myself, in the interest of moving forward, I was okay with that because I didn't want to see any more roadblocks. As it turns out, that request seemed to be a serious impediment for the administration because it would have required a rewriting of, or at least writing new specs in addition to the existing specs, and it could have, as the administration was expressing, was going to cost a lot of money. So the rebidding was not just a simple matter of putting the project back out to bid, but it was almost like a new project, or at least a new bid. We've kind of found that out late in the game, that was actually what was holding it all up when we kept asking, why have you not rebid this? So that led to the discussions we had last couple of months, I guess. And the mayor then presented to us the information that in order to rebid this project, even as it was originally approved, it would require updating of the bid. It would require some work on the part of the engineer that had put it together. And that's understandable, and it was approximately $69,000, let's say. We also had a back and forth that if we were going to consider asking to bid the project in two parts, one, the complete renovation, and a possible just repair, if you will, of the existing pool, there were a lot of problems with that, having to do with state law, codes, and so that argument went back and forth for a while. And we've received information that makes it fairly clear that, according to the state, health department, and all this other stuff, repairing the pool as it is with the beach, like zero depth opening, if you will. Sorry, that wasn't very clear. It's just not possible. It's not possible. It's not allowed anymore. And I think we almost got to the point where we would have to accept that. So that option was not on the table anymore. It didn't seem to be on the table, even though we might want to insist that it should be. And I know we recently received some information where someone reminded us that the last time we did a large-scale renovation of this pool, our Representative Mashinsky had passed legislation that basically provided for an exception to the state law. Now, there was a suggestion that why can't we do that again? So that's an argument that I want to leave for another day. I do not want to see the back and forth about can we renovate it as it exists now, just basically repair it and do other things to the site. I don't want that discussion to hold this up any longer. We have at least reached a point where we've got agreement from the administration that we can put the original project, the complete renovation of the facility, not just a pool, the whole project that we had approved, we can put that back out to bid to find out what it would cost today, which is what we've been wanting to know for close to 3 years. We can do that, and it will cost $64,000 to $69,000 for the engineer to do that. We've got buy-in from the administration to go forward with that if we authorize that expenditure. So, I'm making a motion right now that we authorize the rebidding of the previously approved community pool project in the same scope and specifications, and authorize the expenditure of $69,000 to pay for the engineering fees to do so.
Second.
And then I'll leave the idea of the potential need for a bid waiver after the vote, after we talk about this. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things in response to that. Number one, I know you don't want to get into this tonight again, but I'm still not convinced from everything I've been reading. I read over the act and the law from 1993. I'm not sure that that's not still in play. I think that may still be on the books. I think our pool may be grandfathered in. Still trying to get a definitive answer on that. So I'm still not convinced that we can't repair what we have. So that's number one, but I know you don't want to go off on that tangent again tonight. So, but again, I'm still not comfortable going forward with a new project until I'm convinced that we can't fix what we have. So that's number one. Number two, I'm just curious, Councilor Testa, there were, in the letter that we received, which I think is where you got the $69,000 figure from the mayor's office on September 15th. He also mentioned that, it was the last line of the letter, that TLB can provide an updated construction cost estimate for $7,500. And I'm wondering why we're not going to go that route instead. So if I'm reading this correctly, the total rebid would be $69,000, but we could maybe for $7,500 just ask the company who was already awarded the bid what their current cost would be. I don't know if you want to respond, Councilor Tester.
I'd be happy to.
When Chairman Cervoni was out of state, I assembled the agenda with the mayor, and the $69,000 is the cost to rebid, which was what the discussion and construction of the motion was. And the bid waiver part, the law department said was not necessary based on the current way it was written, and that's what we're doing. Same person, we're getting a new bid.
I appreciate that, thanks.
And there should be an email that we all received regarding that part. So there are specifications that are required to be changed more than, I believe, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, than just updating for $7,500 the construction cost piece.
Oh, so the $7,500 doesn't apply anymore?
It's
If I can,
included, or go ahead.
If I can help, the 7,500 would not deal with any look at change in codes that could result in higher costs. Maybe someone looking at what is there, what's spec'd out, and what the potential cost is, given what they see in the marketplace right now. But if without, you don't know whether that's real or not, in part because you won't know what any changes in codes may result in terms of cost. But that's the trade-off.
Okay, so it's a ballpark. I mean, it'll give us an idea. So, because obviously the codes, this was from when? I mean, the last bid was several years ago. So I don't think the codes would have changed that drastically. So I think for the 7,500, we get a ballpark figure. Anyway, Councilor Tessa, did you want to just express why you went one way?
I understand that. I don't see the point. I want to rebid the project so with the next council and administration can make a decision on whether we're going to rebuild that facility. That's where I am. $7,500 is just, okay, give me an estimate, and then we'll sit here and say, wow, he thinks it's going to cost this much. You sure we want to go forward with this? Do we even want to bid it now? I'm not interested in that, personally. I want to know what's it going to cost to do the project, and I want the council and the new mayor to be able to make a decision that, as we did 3 years ago, on whether we're going to go forward with this. So that's to that answer, or that question. As to can we still potentially refurbish, rebuild the existing, I'm not interested in that either, frankly. I liked the idea that this was, we had a committee that spent countless hours, months, if not years, reviewing everything and coming up with a project which was not just a pool renovation. It was a rebuilding of a new pool, but it was a complex. It was a recreation facility with so much more than play in the water. And that's what I wanted to see done, and that's what I still want to see done. I don't want to say, because if we decide it's too expensive and the council chooses not to do it, that's how this is supposed to work. But to say, maybe we can just, reopen the pool as it is, that's not going to happen. But I shouldn't say that. Maybe it could, but I'm not interested in that. I want to see what we did done again. And then we can decide whether it's something that we're interested in. And then, if it's determined that, for whatever reason, we don't want to do it as a body, as a community, then we can start backtracking and maybe consider other options. But I'm kind of tired of I've been around for a while. I'm tired of us trying to find lesser options for things when we don't need to, until we have all of the information. Okay, I'm not being irresponsible in that respect. I'm saying let's find out what we can potentially do. And then if we need to, pull back. I'll bring up the athletic complexes, for example. Both times, we just finally, I know the Sheehan Field is finally going to be ready for Thursday night. Well, when the Sheehan facility was done originally, many years ago, there was a lot of arguments between us and the administration about the scope of it. And there were estimates given, and so on, and so on, and so on. And there was a lot of effort put in to scale down that project before we even approved it. And I was insistent on, no, we got to go as far as we can with this and find out, get the best we can. And we did the best we can. Same thing happened with the Lyman Hall project. We started getting estimates, talking about what it would cost to put the athletic complex at Lyman Hall. And before we had a full bid, before we could make a decision, there was talk like, ooh, maybe only 6 lanes. Maybe not this, maybe that. Let's pull back now, before we know what it really would cost. And I was insistent then that that's not the way to go. Once we get the price, if we have to scale back, we can do it then. And then we chose not to. We went forward with the project, and look what we have. We have an amazing athletic complex at Lyman Hall as well, which allows us to bring in state tournaments and that stuff. So it's the same kind of idea with this. Not only in this case, we actually approved this project. We had decided that this is what we wanted. And I'm not going to rehash why it was vetoed and whatever. That was the mayor's prerogative. We didn't override it. But we had something ready to go that we all thought was going to be fantastic. Well, we can do that again. And I want to know what it's going to cost to do that again. And then, if we decide that it's too much, given the circumstances and given everything else on the table, then we can pull back if we need to. So, yeah, I've talked a lot. So anyway, thank you very much for indulging me.
You glad you asked?
Thank you. No, no, I appreciate your opinion, and I think we just have maybe a different way of looking at it. I think I would rather go the other way, and I think I'm looking to try to get as much information as we can in as inexpensive a way as possible. And so for me, to spend the $7,500 to get an estimate, I think is a fairly inexpensive way to go. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. Again, I'm still hanging on to the refurb of the current pool. I actually spoke to a group this week, a couple people from a group this week that were telling me that they're fans of the pool, but they don't like the new project. And again, I know I talked about this last time, but once we get rid of that, we can never go back to the design we have now. And I don't think it's a bad design. I think people really like it. And so again, I think I would rather kind of start small, see what we can get for as inexpensive an amount as we can, rather than spend $69,000 to rebid this again and then not know if we're going to actually get the pool or not, because whether this administration or the next wants it or not, we don't know. So I think it's just I respect your opinion. I think we're just looking at it from two different ways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Councilor Testa, if I may.
See what happened the last time that happened? Yeah.
Well, he sometimes has a lot of knowledge. I mean, many times. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. You said that in reviewing the documents, you've determined that we cannot have a zero depth entry pool. And I'm just I've been reviewing the documents and I did not see that affirmative statement. Can you just let me know what I'm missing?
No.
Okay. Because
it's my understanding of the information that was given to us, and that's all.
Okay, because I'm looking at, well, for instance, on page 19 of the older of the documents, it talks about the side walls, and it talks about slope, and 11 degrees from the vertical, without me measuring, seems like a slope that is not dramatic. 11 degrees is not a lot, right? So that's similar to what is there. Now, what I've heard about objections to redoing the current is because the pool would have a capacity of a lot of people, therefore you're gonna have to redo the bathhouse, and therefore it's a total redo. But my retort to that is we can limit the amount of people that while the pool may have a capacity of X, we could say you're going to do, X divided by 10, and therefore the bathhouse may be within the capacity and therefore not have to do the capacity. I mean, certainly what was passed in 1993 by the legislature, it's a special act, not a public act. So special acts are usually time limited or focused for a particular benefactor. So we don't know which here. But it didn't say anything about zero depth entry. It didn't say, we are going to allow them to maintain a zero depth entry. It only had to do with the filtration system, which is something we haven't heard because of the filtration system or that's the problem, because nobody's gone in there and given us an opinion, okay? So I'm still looking for facts, but I have to throw the flag because with the last presentation that we had on this and the letter was informative from the administration to this body. The item that's on the agenda is not initiative by the administration. So I have to ask, how does this body have the power to appropriate $1 without the administration coming to us with a recommendation? Which has always been your position, right? So now you've put something on the agenda to spend money, and I don't think it's...
There's no appropriation or transfer because the money is already in the pool account. There's money still there.
So, Mayor,
money can be spent. Same project, the money can be spent. It is there.
So the correspondence that we had at the last meeting, you did not conclude your letter with, therefore, I request that the council appropriate from the money that's there.
Because there's no need to appropriate. The money there is available for expenditure.
So if this body passes what's before us, are you going to spend the money in the next 2 weeks?
Well, the money would be spent to hire the architect to do the work necessary, and when that work was done, the bid would go out. We have the money to hire the architect.
No, I understand, but we're also coming to the end of the year. I mean...
Well, no, the fiscal year
not the
isn't...
fiscal year. I'm talking about, and I'm trying to be respectful, I mean, you're not going to be there in January, and I just want to make sure that it happens before January.
Well, we would be hiring the architect to begin the process of the code review. If it takes 3 months for that to be done, then, right, someone else will deal with it. But we will have hired the architect to do this work.
Okay, so I guess we're still in that little gray area. But, my last thing, Chairman Cervoni, you may recall when we first got on the council, the police station was up in the air, and we were graciously invited as elected councilors but not sworn in to attend, to be part of at least that meeting. I would just respectfully ask that we're going to have an election between now and the next meeting, that whoever is elected, although not sworn in, be invited to at least be in attendance at that meeting so that they can be up to speed. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands on the council at the moment, questions or comments from the public?
Jason Michael, Meadow Street. Being on the Parks and Rec Commission and the vice chair of the pool committee, I was in the trenches the entire time and at the front lines of this throughout. And to kind of put the pool as it is and the question of trying to redo the old pool in perspective, that pool's 1 million gallons. That's 1 million gallons to fill, to maintain. It's 1 million gallons to filter if there's a biological event, which closes it for the day. I think it's an 8-hour cycle because the pool is so big. It's just an inappropriate size, regardless of design or history or how gives you good feelings to remember being in it. It's just not an appropriate pool for our town. In fact, even when the pool was filled, in the beginning of the summer, gleaming, having just spent $10,000, $15,000 to scrape and paint it again, which it would still need to have done every year, even if we replace the mechanics. Even when it was gleaming and ready to go for the season, we still weren't using the whole pool. And it wasn't because there was a lack of swimmers. There were large portions of that pool, over 50% of it, where people weren't allowed to swim for safety reasons. There's a huge filtration system in the center of that. You can see where the trees are growing out of it now. It's a big area and it's dark. That's all buoyed off from every angle because it's not safe for people to swim there when it's in ideal form. The bathhouse, regardless of pool capacity, has gang showers. It's got gang dressing rooms. No privacy, no curtains, no walls. I don't think anyone can envision opening that. So regardless of fixing the pool, if you were to fix this 1 million gallon impoundment, you'd still have to address the bathhouse to an extreme degree. Now, all of this, if you can imagine, you're a car person. It's a car that hasn't been started in 5 years. It's sat outside in New England weather for 5 years. No water has run through those pipes. Probably water has frozen in those pipes. They're below the pool. You would have to excavate to replumb. I just don't think it's a, and I don't have, we met with Mirtha Pool long before TLB. We met with a company that is out of Italy, but they did pools all over the world. And at the time, they were doing the biggest public pool in the country, which was in New York. And they came out to see us, and we were on site, and it was a thought to put a membrane over the whole thing, in half-inch rubber. They were going to build a wall between the lap pool and the whole zero-entry section that would hopefully give us 2 filtration systems. It was all an idea. I think it was around $4.5 million. And the committee was like, well, if we're going to spend $4.5 million and still have this pool, that's what started the ball rolling to figure on making this big destination park. Because if we're going to spend $4 million just to line this pool, that didn't make sense without making this a place to be for more than 2.5 months a year, which led to the splash pad and everything else like that. So if it gives you any insight to the pool as it is, those are the hurdles you're facing. You're facing having a car that the paint blows off of when you take it around the block, and a car that only 2 people can go in because the back seat's off limits. It's just not an appropriate facility, even if it were to be made new in the state that it is. It just doesn't make sense. It was the biggest community pool in the world for a reason, because no one else saw a need to build one that big. Because it didn't make sense. And to think about putting, it will be millions of dollars to rehab the pool the way it is. I have a hard time believing that it wouldn't come close to what it would cost to have the entire park redone. And we'd still be without a splash pad. We'd still be without an exercise loop. We'd still be, I mean, that park included a meditation center down by that creek. It had a lot of things in it, and Councilor Testa has brought that up a couple times tonight. And I think to keep that in mind of rehabbing what we have and not having all the other amenities compared to this entire destination, and even if it is a splash pad, the splash pad was $500,000. It was massive. It would probably just have closed 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you can see that the usefulness of that. And none of that comes with rehabbing this pool for multiple $1 million. So just food for thought.
Name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Karen Foster, 40 Jones Road. I last appeared before this council 30 years ago. Boy, you were sitting right there. Gosh. Reliving my gilded youth here or what? Oh, I guess we both are, right. Okay, I was the founder back 30 years ago of Friends of Community Pool. And I'd like to take this occasion to read into the record the names of the core members of that group whose dedication, hard work, and devotion to the town of Wallingford made it happen. And in alphabetical order, they are Betsy Bates, Joanne Bean, Ted DeVitt, Amy Humphreys, Dick Gachin, Bernadette and Frank Renda, and last but not least, Tom Zappala. We also had support from several other town notables, Joanna Fishbane, Bert Killen, Iris Papale, and eventually Steve Knight, plus hundreds and hundreds of people signed paper, petitions out in front of Stop and Shop to support the fact that they wanted to renovate and preserve this extraordinary zero-depth pool. Now, of course, what was happening was pool builders of the conventional sort were rushing to bend anyone's ear back, dollar signs dancing in their heads. This pool must be demolished. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's a white elephant. What are you doing with this thing? What you need to do is to build a rectangular box, period. Well, at that point, along came Mary Mashinsky, and she said, well, let's just see about that. Do we really have to give up on this amazing treasure that we have? And so she co-sponsored in January of 1993 Bill 5943, and it reads, "The town of Wallingford may renovate the Wallingford Community Pool, the filtration system, and diving depths without obtaining a certificate of approval for use." Now, I think it was you who raised the question of whether this was a time limit, whether there was a time limit on that, or whether this was grandfathered in perpetuity. Our understanding at the time was that it was grandfathered in perpetuity, that was simply the way it was going to be, that we were going to be allowed to be an exception, to be different, to be unconventional. And, we were okay with that. So 30 years ago, we did it, and I'm hoping very much, and I know a lot of other Wallingford residents are hoping this as well, that the torch is obviously being passed to the next generation here. We're hoping very much that you will see your way clear to keeping this jewel in Wallingford's crown. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? And I bring it back to the council and Councilor Marone.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, I'm going to vote no on this just for the same reason as last time. I agree with Councilor Testa that the rebuild is probably not realistic. I mean, attendance at the park was significantly down before it closed. However, I also think that within a month of the end of this mayor's term, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have a new mayor and then hand him, this large bill for the new pool. I mean, I fully support the project. I have fond memories of the pool. I'd love to see it rebuilt in one capacity or another, but I think that I hate to chase good money with bad and spend $69,000 and then have the new mayor, whoever that is, say that it's, they're looking at all the priorities. It's not a priority, and then we've kind of, wasted our money on this. So I think if we could do it now, we could do it in a month and a half if the new mayor thinks that this is a priority. So respectfully, to your motion, I'm going to vote no. Thank you, sir.
All right, no other hands. Madam Clerk, would you please call the, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I just want to clarify something. So I did pull up the special act. And just special acts by definition, I think I mentioned before, are usually time limited or for a particular benefactor. It expressly says, and there is no comma after community pool. I think it would have a different meaning if it did. It says the town of Wallingford may renovate the Wallingford community pool filtration system to meet filtration rate requirements of the public health code. I think if the legislature had passed the language with a comma after community pool, it would naturally be having to do with the entirety of the pool. But clearly without that, it's a filtration system. I opine, as sometimes I play a lawyer on TV, but that's my reading of what's the language that's before us. So I haven't heard of a different interpretation. Just wanted to clarify that for the record. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now I think you can call the roll.
Allenson?
Dang it, Councilor Marone, why do you have to make sense? No.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
No.
Laffin?
No.
Marone?
No.
Tata?
No.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Cervoni?
I vote yes, but the motion fails. There being no other business on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the meeting adjourned.